Good morning. Welcome to the panel where we're going to discuss shifting your IT spend from legacy to the leading edge. That dilemma that many organizations have of taking IT budgets, spending on legacy or spending on the new for the transformation. I feel really honored to be joined today by a magnificent panel who I'll introduce now. Mark Vigo, who is Head of Strategy and Initiatives at Cloudflare. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Peter. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Next is Vishal Rustagi, who's the VP of Digital Transformation at Onlock OKR. Good morning, Vishal.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And finally, Alex Fides, Head of Digital Operations at the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency. Morning to you, Alex.
Yeah, good morning and pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I know we're going to have quite a bubbly and feisty debate because it already started before we went live just now, which is fantastic. So we're all warmed up and ready to go. The first question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to come to you first, Alex, with this, is how can an organization maximize the impact from its budget, for its IT budget or its transformation budget, both to meet the legacy needs and demands, whether it's application refresh or server upgrades or whatever it is, but also in delivering the new for the transformation? What sort of strategies could be used to get that alignment, to make sure the balance is right?
Yeah, great question. And as an organization, we clearly had some big legacy systems that we had. But what we did was took a different approach. As we looked at what the future of the business was going to be, we set a service strategy. So if we looked at a legacy system that supported vehicle testing, we'd take a real view of what is the vision that we want to do with that business area, that service, and take us forward, and get that vision agreed across the board with stakeholders so that when we move forward through the key decisions, people knew what the new world would look like. They were happy to let go of legacy. Because I think that's one of the big challenges with some organizations. They get very attached to legacy that can have been there for 20 years. And I think as you move away from the safety of systems that have sometimes been there for 2 decades and moving into cloud, cloud computing, virtualization, you have to take people on that journey. So our vision is focus on the business needs, focus on the vision, and the technology and the investment will start to follow. It is the big challenge we have is there is a perception that there's certainty with legacy, that you can predict your costs, you can predict your investment costs. It's never the case. So as you do move into greater digital transformation, then you have to be brave and you have to give the programs of work headroom to be able to respond to ever-changing needs. So using the word agile or investment, you need to be agile with the investments as well and really back that decision. It's no point giving a transformation program an absolutely fixed budget because my experience, you'll discover other things on the way, business needs will change, and you'll end up with something. So you've got to be brave and you've got to give the program the headroom that's affordable, that can expand to meet the needs. So that's what we've done. But I come back to that point. Have a vision for what you want to achieve for the service.
I think that vision to service strategy is a really great opener for us. And I'm sure we're going to be playing that back again and again and again as we go through this conversation. Something I'm going to press you on before I move to somebody else's input. It's all very well having that strategy and that vision. There must have been an element of regret spend, in that you must have had to maintain your legacy systems to keep them going on their last legs just long enough until the new transformational systems took over.
I think there's a sense of regret. There's also a sense of fear that sometimes when you are investing to keep legacy systems and they're out of support, technology is so old that it's unpredictable, and particularly for critical services, yes, you'll regret doing that, but there's a necessity to get that transformation piece right. You do sometimes need to keep legacy running for longer than you'd ideally do. The worst thing you can do is can legacy move straight into the new world when it's not fully tested, fully explored, fully developed. So I think there's a word regret, but there's also you're accepting a risk that you're keeping something alive that you originally planned to decommission. And yeah, there's a little bit of fear there because it's unpredictable.
Yep. Great answer. Great answer. Mark, I can see you nodding there. How would share your experience and your ideas around balancing that strategy between, I'm going to call it the regret spend continually into legacy, but also wanting to invest in the new and the new vision?
Yeah, I guess it's sometimes you can make it a mathematical equation, or sometimes you can kind of feel your way through it. I think this is the first time in sort of IT history is in all these programs where it's a serious combination of those two things. I think Alex said it well, is you have to have a plan. And we in our company, we went through some serious transformation because of what we do for a living. I mean, we carry nearly 15-20% of all the internet traffic around the world on a daily basis. So that kind of scale requires us to take a look at our underlying systems. And notwithstanding the whole pandemic and some of the dislocation that's caused, early on in our days, we looked at it in our plan on first things is, what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to make money, save money, or avoid spending money? And I think those three things, which we and sometimes in IT come up with fancy words, but at the end of the day, it's a business impact, it's an operational impact, or it's a financial impact. And whether we're saving money, making money, or avoiding spending money in the future, that has to be mapped to those business benefits. That is the IT transformation. And so we spent a lot of time looking at that and then how it had an effect on the employee satisfaction and how it had an effect on the customer satisfaction. So that matrix of mapping is both a feel and it's a mathematical equation kind of together. But what I find, and I think we were talking about a little bit earlier, is the number one resource that has to be transformed is the data. Right? We have to look first at what is the information we're looking to get better access to, what is the information we're looking to expose to others so they can use it, what is the information that we have to keep private and secure, and that kind of is a clue on how you put these programs together. And for us, our experience was we were a layer, and I won't talk technical too much, but we were a layer 7 company. We cared about how our customers' applications, web applications or websites, were being delivered safely around the world. And we quickly realized that the layer 3, the underneath, which whether it was the MPLS or VPN or any of those transport technologies, they weren't going to scale. And we could put boxes and boxes and boxes at the walls of our castle, i.e. at the walls of the data center, and they just weren't going to work. They just weren't going to scale to what we need. I mean, we're carrying nearly 50 million websites a day across the globe, right, from eyeball to server. And those servers may be in the big hyperscalers, or they may be in origin data sites or data centers. So in order to do something like that, we had to go through a massive transformation. We had to build a new layer 3. So we went out, we looked at it, and effectively what we did was we moved all of the resources that were at the castle walls in the moat, and we put them on the network. So all those services that you get that you normally buy lots of boxes for, we just said, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then we layered over zero trust, and we layered over SASE and all those things that are interesting techniques effectively to privatize the internet, because COVID hit, right? And when COVID hit, everybody in 48 hours notice had to move to a new location. Suddenly the internet became the new corporate network. And if we had not started that 10 years ago, I think we would have been in trouble when COVID hit. But then when COVID hit, obviously we were ready for it. So now we've got a different problem. Now our scale went from nice to, oh my Lord. And that kind of vertical, oh my Lord scale is tough to manage. So I go back to say, look, it's feel and it's math, and you have to put them together, and you are going to have legacy spend for whatever reasons. But we always looked at it and having a plan, and Alex said it well, is if you have a plan, you have a better chance of not wasting money and applying appropriately. And as I said, ours, we looked at it on 3 levels: business, operational, financial.
Great answers. I think we're coming away there with 2 clear signals: is have a plan, have a vision. and know about your service strategy, know what it is you're trying to deliver. Now, I think this is a major question. This is our first question. So Vishal, I'm going to invite you to comment on this as well.
Yeah, so for our plan is like we do run digital transformation programs in our organization. We recently running one of them, and we do that as a part of our strategy. So for us, digital transformation is divided on three, like it's been built on three pillars, like an operational efficiency, customer experience, and business innovation. As we talked about, there are a lot of companies and a lot of customers which are dealing with this problem. They have a legacy application and they really want to transform from a legacy application stack to a new application, because that is where the whole operational efficiency or business innovations or customer experience part get impacted. So one of our strategy, like we work on a strategy which is called strategy to execution part of it, where we define, where we do digital strategies around it and figure it out that what is important for us, what is basically been important for us. And that's where you create your vision, you create your mission statements. And theoretically, once you have that thing done, you bring the alignment into your organization, because the most important part for any companies to go through digital transformation is its culture, because that's the most important part. You have to bring that culture where people are ready to make a change in their way of working. They're ready to use new systems and they're ready to adapt new systems. So that is an important part which we really focus when we do that. And of course, these digital programs are bigger programs. They are not like 6 or 2 or 3 months programs. They are bigger programs, like runs in a year's kind of a thing. So you really have to bring an alignment from top to bottom in an organization, that how these digital programs has to be run on the floor and how their success criteria has to be converted. So we have got a strategy which we work on, where we bring our digital strategy way and then execute that accordingly, and then bring the alignment by putting some of the goals for each of us, like all the people who are running different processes, different departments. All that is an important part. And after that, once we are done with that, we have to prioritize it. That's where we bring the plan together, that this is what our plan is. This is the way we have to go forward. And obviously you have to track your budgets. There's a very high possibility that you will go haywire on your budgets, because there are many unknowns in this when you run such a big programs. But nobody has any doubt that you have to run these systems together, legacy and the new systems together. There is but you have to slowly move yourself from one system to, and that's where your agility comes in picture. You have to be agile. You have to do this incrementally. So that is where I see that the way companies has to move forwards. And there are systems which helps you to do this alignment and prioritization, how to run this vision of your organization, how to align a complete organization towards it. So that is what I see the way forward.
That's great. You picked up on one, or introduced a piece that I think is really important. Within an element of that strategy, whatever the vision is going to be, part of that strategy has to be shifting the culture, because people will have new ways of working. They will be using new applications and new systems, and you have to move them with the vision, and they have to be part of the vision. So I think that's really important, Vishal. Thank you. And now you also mentioned operational efficiency, Vishal. So I'm going to come back to you straight away with the next question. And we're going to talk about operational efficiency. And I want to understand how simplifying and transforming applications, through standardization or rationalization or simplification, automation perhaps, how that can deliver operational value and operational efficiency. Is it really possible? And if it is possible, how do you do it?
Yeah, it's very much possible. I think the science has already been solved by many of the organizations, and there are companies which are adopting a lot of automation ways, artificial intelligence, machine learning, RPA, talking about all these technologies are the part of our day-to-day activities now. So that is been coming. And of course, when I say that, okay, we have to start with the strategy. One of the things which we recently did in our organization itself, while I was a part of that team, we started doing application portfolio rationalization. We have a big landscape of apps which we use internally. And eventually we figure it out that, all these are not required, because when we talk about operational efficiency, we have to make sure that our IT spends are get regulated and they are spent on the new technologies from where we can get more business innovations, more operational efficiencies. So that's obviously the application portfolio rationalization is one of the ways to move forward. And that is one of the requirement to do that. And once you have that in place, obviously that particular process guides you how to spend your IT budgets, how to go forward with that. So that's what I say, that yeah, automation, these technologies definitely helps you to deliver quality to your customers, to your internal employees. It's all about employee engagement, customer satisfaction, customer engagement. These technologies are built on these kind of pillars at the moment.
So Alex, I should imagine that your world is very operational. What's your view on this? Have you managed to deliver operational efficiency during your journey that you're on?
Yes, we have. I'll take one of the services, which is the MOT, which is the annual inspection of vehicles. Is as we've designed the application that the garages use to deliver that, we've always looked at how can you make the flow better, the interaction, the information that we present to those testers. You know, on average, there's about 50 minutes spent inspecting a vehicle. We've made sure that we reduce that time down. And you know, we can put a value on a minute to industry, which is, let's just say for rough math, is £1. We do 42 million MOT tests a year. So that's money that's back in the hands of industry. So I think it's really tangible to efficiency. I think there's one other thing, if I could add, Peter. Yeah. It's also about effectiveness. You know, efficiency is a great thing, but you've got to make certain that, particularly in the sector I work in, which is, you know, government, that they are effective applications that deliver a better outcome than the previous process. There's no point investing and being, you know, saving if the outcome is not better. And particularly when we look at regulatory work, the effectiveness of applications and design is critical. So an example where we've used artificial intelligence on our enforcement of the MOT garages, we saw the correct application of that move our enforcement interventions from a 33% outcome where action was read to over 75%. So there's got to be a reason for doing it. And it's not just in my sector about punishing, but it's about the effectiveness and the outcome.
I think that first off, my first observation of what you were talking about there was you focused on making operational efficiency in your stakeholders, in the workshops and the garages who are using the MOT test. And I think that is a wonderful example of something you're doing that's impacting somebody else's business. And I love the metric, you know, the £1 an hour or whatever you were building up there. That's absolutely fascinating. The other thing that I think you brought up, which is really, really important, and it reminds me of my time when I was Chief Data Officer at Southern Water, a water utility company. And obviously part of my role there was to bring a rationalization and efficiency to the data and analytics within the organization. But it wasn't just efficiency, it had to be effective. It had to actually impact water quality, water operations, environmental issues, regulatory effectiveness. And so, you know, those two words which you brought up there echoed in my mind of my time at Southern Water. So, so I think they're important terms about what we're talking here about operational efficiency. So, Mark, I'm going to come to you because you're nodding, I think, and agreeing with us. What's your view on this balance between effectiveness and efficiency through application, refresh, replacement, transformation?
It's I guess one of the $64,000 questions. As we all embark on these, you know, modernization programs. But I think there's been a dirty little secret in the whole world of IT. It's been that that most IT is sized, purchased, operated, and retired based on allocation rather than consumption up until very recently. So if you think about it, is whatever we were buying in the past, we sort of forecasted the peak and we bought and operated and managed and then eventually retired from the peak of what we thought we needed. And that was, you know, I think that was a good model because it ingrained safety. It ingrained that we weren't going to have downtime, and it made sure that the consumers of our IT were never at risk. Okay, they might be at risk for other things, but they weren't at risk for the system just not being there because, oops, we got it wrong. I think a lot of people came to the market with a consumption-based model, and I think that has fundamentally transformed how we look at ROI, how we look at I guess you would say, the payoff of these modernization programs. So you can go up and down based on usage. The down is not so easy. The up is always easy, although there is technical boundaries. And we looked at it from our point of view, because I think it's probably fair to say that almost every company or every organization is becoming an IT provider as we all digitize our lives. Whether we are a government agency or whether we're a commercial provider, we're all sort of delivering IT to somebody, right? And if you can do that based on the consumption model rather than an allocation model, then you're more accurate to be able to make sure that that chain of cost is turning into some value, whether it be revenue, whether it be cost savings, whether it be a bit of both, as I said earlier, avoiding having to budget in the future. So I think the technique is have a business plan in mind when you go through the ROI calculations, but probably more importantly is have a set of micro metrics, right, that are underneath that, all those little elements, right? And I'll give you a great example is in the last 2 years, as retailers, some of our customers are very large, the largest brands of retail. And what they're looking to do is increase, especially in the last 2 years, increase their online presence. Well, they could go out and just order lots of kit, order lots of cloud, order lots of new everything, but probably smart enough not to do that because they weren't sure how long this thing was going to last. I think now that the whole pandemic and the whole relocation and the whole is going to leave a large scar on how people buy things in the future. If you think about it, we're all developing new muscle. We never bought our groceries really online. We did a little bit. Now it's a huge percentage. Clothes and shoes and all those things. The teenagers and the younger ones did a lot of that, but now a lot of us are doing that in much bigger doses. And the collective demand upon internet and up on network and up on let's just call it the internet on the whole, it creates massive digital transformation needs. And so if we're not measuring those microservices, how are we generating more bandwidth for someone so they can put more rich media up onto the website so someone can actually size the clothes to their body? They're more likely then to purchase and not return, which is the whole horrible thing about online retail. And so what we put a set of metrics together to help someone match their IT spend to their need, and doing it on a consumption basis makes it a lot easier. And if we were able to do that by margin, by revenue, and by cost avoidance through the budgeting, those micro elements of measurement help us get more accurate, so we don't have wastage when at the end of the program someone says, well, that's great, but I didn't really get much for it. They're along that journey. They're now seeing their revenue increase, their margin increase, their costs go down. They don't have to budget so much at the end of the year because it's consumption based. They're just paying for what they use. So those are some of the new things that we're seeing in our client base.
That's a great discussion from all of you around the impact on operational efficiency and how we should view it. And I think the call out for me there is operational efficiency and effectiveness. Let's change the angle slightly and let's think about some of the new approaches and some of the new data sources that are being leveraged by organizations. And my question is, how do we bring things like IoT and pervasive sensing and RPA and automation into an organization's existing data fabric? Alex, again, I should think this is incredibly relevant to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, data is one of the biggest assets that we have. It's a small piece for an individual citizen, but that little bit of data can be used to get a license, to get certain permissions to do things. So it's really critical. I mean, we have explored RPA on our practical driving test side, particularly to do with that. That's worked very successfully for us. But I think the whole data science thing and that culture change from what I would describe as a MI static reporting historic view to an interactive live future prediction is a culture change. And we talk about data science now, and we talk about recruiting data scientists and using platforms that give us real-time proactive measures. that doesn't tell you what's happened, but tells you what should happen. And I think that's a mindset change. You know, I've spent a career looking at historic data and being judged on it. What I'm judged on today is forecasting, prediction, etc. So if you take today in the United Kingdom, we launched the practical driving test after lockdown. We launched the theory test. We have hundreds of thousands of people waiting for answers. So we have to predict with accuracy the demand, the volume, and that, you know, and we need to, you know, lots of businesses need to match the resources that they have and the utilities that they have against either their internal demand or customer. So it's that forward-looking bit. So we really think that we will become a very data-driven digital organization. And if you take another area on automotive, if you look at the sort of landscape of automotive over the next 10 to 15 years, where effectively the computers with wheels on, we will have to adapt to that. From, you know, when you talk about integrating the Internet of Things, well, that is an Internet of Thing, but we'll want to put a human being in that Internet of Thing, and how do we work and design those systems? It's a conversation for another day, but we are moving from a very mechanical engineering, analog type of delivery to a futuristic data-driven Internet of Things thing. And we're on that journey very early on. Some things we've done successfully, RPA, AI, we love that. But it's that next bit is when we are actually interacting with a computer with wheels on, and yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, very much so. I agree with you. Mark, what about you? What are your views on integrating some of these new techniques, the new technologies, perhaps new data sources into the existing, let's not say IT fabric, but the data fabric?
Yeah, it's some of the things that we get involved in now. I mean, not only as a human being are exciting, but as a businessman, we're thinking, God, all these new business models. I think Alex said it well. Is a lot of these cars are IoTs on wheels. They're just giant computers, you know, going around. I tell you, for us, we went on this journey. We first, people came to us because they wanted their website secure and delivered in a nice way around the world to eyeballs all over the world. So, you know, we have 250 cities for the data centers. So God knows how many data centers we have, but all those 250 cities that have multiple data centers in them can be a processor of data. And when it was originally websites and then laterally web applications so people can get access to them securely. But lately, very lately, it's now all these actuators. So whether it's someone putting an actuator in a highway and counting the amount of tires and the pressure in order to come up with data on maintenance, or whether someone's putting another one of our customers is putting actuators on pipes, actually in London, to try to measure temperature fluctuations to try to spot Legionnaire's disease and I think, and you know, important stuff. It's all important stuff, but but to me it's all linked, because what we're seeing is these IoT devices are creating a huge amount of data, and today it's almost one-way traffic, right? They need a secure transport layer. That's our business, right? We absolutely are seeing almost all IoT users are coming to people like us because it's a private use of the internet. The next version of IoT becomes transactional, right? And that sounds a little bit scary, but leave that alone for a minute, because I think the combination is the actuator is gathering the data. We're transporting it securely over a private internet. And there's 250 cities, so God knows, you know, it can get there safely and quickly. But then it goes into an RPA engine, because a lot of people aren't looking at they're looking at the shiny object, which is the internet or the actuator device. They're not actually thinking about the amount of data that's coming in. And a lot of it doesn't need to be human interacted. A lot of it can be robotic process automated, right? And that RPA engine could fill databases, could fill applications, could fill AI engines, which is the next linkage, where AI is now spotting trends, looking for anomalies, coming up with conclusions, and then delivering it to someone, typically a human, to look at insight in order to act, which either changes the IoT device. Right? We've got customers that are doing drills down into the wells, and that drill bit is measuring chemistry, and it's now saying to the people on the top, go sideways, go down further, stop drilling, hey, you need a new bit. And the whole supply chain is now active, right? One of our customers, German auto manufacturer, same thing. They're measuring all of the processes through IoT devices, and their supply chain is global. So someone in another part of the world is building a seat that will be in 200 hours coming to the end of the assembly line. So it's all linked, and it has to be transported on a secure layer. So we're getting to see both ends of it. And what I find the mistake they make is they're not thinking about the size of that data, a volume of that data, not really the variance of it, but the volume. They're now starting to pay attention to it, and the linkage is incredible.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I loved where you introduced that thing about at the moment it may be just a one-way flow from IoT or the actuator, but it is already happening where it's transactional. It's going back into an AI engine, perhaps, that's making a decision about what that device, that actuator needs to do to respond to what it's just sensed. And I think bringing that kind of data, and I think the volumes of data is something that is difficult to bring into existing fabric. It's new data structures and volume. I remember when people started bringing in unstructured data, that was an issue because they never really met unstructured data before, and it's hard to put into a database. So yeah, I think, Mark, that's a great vision forward about some of the challenges we're going to be facing. Vishal, let's come to you on this one. We're talking about operational efficiency. No, we're not. We're talking about introducing these new techniques and new technologies into an existing fabric, into a legacy fabric. What challenges have you seen?
I think when you talk about introducing the new technologies, again, as I told you, it's all about, it's one of the things which was majorly being focused was a culture which has to be taken up. Like, yeah, the culture has to be picked up. Plus, there is people are still not very clear that how these technologies will behave for them. Definitely, there's a lot of use cases, a lot of things has been picked up in the market, but yeah, people are still figuring it out. For example, if I talk about AI/ML, there are many use cases which are still in the POC phases, proof of concepts. People are struggling to get into the production environments. So I think the trust on these technologies will slowly come up. The market is still evaluating that how these overall technologies has to be used in their current environments and what kind of a benefits they give. And then another one is the trust, how to trust those kind of decisions. So I just give an example of one of the applications which we're making for a healthcare institute. And normally if you have any problems on the health, you suggested some of the parameters to work on it. And when you work on those parameters, your health becomes, like if you improve on your health, we collect that data. And tomorrow, if someone comes with a similar kind of symptoms, and we really provide them that, okay, this was a parameter which was much more effective for you to deliver, or it has shown improvements, we try to, because that's all coming from artificial intelligence and machine learning. But I think it is more involved with the human nature. So still those systems need to be get monitored, need to be get seen. There has to be some approval process has to be put on these systems to make it happen. So I see that is one of the reasons to move forward. Plus, these systems are pretty much, they have not been implemented that way. So there's a budget constraint too. If you plan for X, you might end up into 10X or 20X, something like that, because that is where the whole thing, and it's also endless journey. So I think earlier it was a different kind of a science, but now it is a different kind of science because these are endless systems. You can actually do whatever you want to do. It's all your thought to where you want to go forward. So I think these are some of the challenges which we have seen in the market when you try to implement these kind of solutions.
I completely agree with your observation there about an endless journey. I think that as we think we're getting towards the end state of that vision, we just realize that there's more things we can do. Our aspirations grow because we become more ambitious and confident in what we can do. Our stakeholders become educated and they support that journey. So it does become an endless journey. I think some of these transformations will have to have a value chain attributed to them, that there will be ongoing development and evolution. Value chain, that brings me to my next question. Before I ask the next question, I'll just remind the audience that please ask questions in the Q&A. If you have any questions, and we'll try and field them either now during the discussion or in a few minutes at the end. Value chain. there is a concept of a digital value chain. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking about a data value chain, but let's broaden it up to the full-blown digital value chain. When we talk about connected customers, we obviously have stakeholders, we have multiple suppliers who are an important part of that value chain, and obviously data is moving along it. How do we articulate to people, and how do we make sure that value chain remains integrated and consistent and scalable? Vishal, let's come to you.
Sorry, can you just come back with the question? I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, I think if we are moving towards a concept of a digital value chain where we have our suppliers, there may be a big cloud supplier or somebody like Mark's organization. We have our internal stakeholders and our internal applications. You know, we have our business stakeholders, and we have our own internal suppliers, and then we have the connected customer, and the customer is almost connected right the way through that chain. How do we maintain the integrity of that chain as we move forward? How do we make each person understand their role in that chain?
Okay, yeah, I think that's where we talk about, like, there's a process, like we talked about strategy to execution. That is what we actually delivered. We got a product called Unlock OKR. That's where the whole OKR concept comes in the picture, where you define the roles for each and everything, and where you actually do the whole alignment of your organization with your customers. That, okay, this is what you really want to deliver to your customer. This is what you really want your customer to deliver to you. And these are some of the goals and the parameters which is then aligned in the organization. Obviously, there's a big value chain which is being executed. There's a connectivity between different stakeholders, but eventually they all have to work on a single outcome. It does not matter that how you are going to do it, but what we are going to do is the most important part. I think that's what this whole Unlock OKR product, which we have built works for us. This is what organizations are using nowadays to align themselves with their customer goals, align their customers with themselves. I think those are the things which help us to deliver that. So this is what the value, I think, digital value chain works for us. How this is the way it works for us.
It's very interesting. It echoes back to a panel that I was chairing earlier this morning, where one of the panelists said, you know, IT teams can do the big hurrah. You know, they've made a cloud instance and put loads of data in it, and the business are looking at it saying, yeah, what's the impact of that? So I think that concept of the value chain is really important. And Alex, going right the way back to the top of the conversation, when you started talking about a service strategy, I would imagine the digital value chain is baked into that.
Absolutely. So, you know, as we get our service visions and we look to how we are transacting with our customers and putting them through the customer journey, we look about the value that we'll get from that, which is measured in different ways. So we're looking at to get the policy outcome. Can we do that effectively, timely? So I think it's about value. There's also the flow. We must understand that value comes down about making people travel through that customer journey, you know, once, that we get the right for the outcome. But as we bake in, you know, lots of our new transformations, we've disaggregated, you know, what were big legacy contracts. So, you know, an example would be you had one supplier, we couldn't now have 8 to 9 with some internal people. So really getting that value chain across all of those suppliers and them understanding the collaborative value that can get between the handover points. And that's quite a challenge as you disaggregate things and get value chain. Because you get one supplier, it's easy to hold the feet to the fire. When you've 8 to 9, they've got to have a collective buy-in. So one person doing one thing wrong can ruin the whole value chain. So really understanding the flow across your supply chain and having that vested interest gives you things. So the words for me is to get that value, you've got to understand the flow across the individual parts with a focus on that quality outcome. And yes, we bake it in, but the market, I think it's something that Mark said earlier, we derive an immense amount of value out of our digital value chain from, you know, consuming products and being better at predicting what we want. So we're starting to move to, you know, predictive buying. So we will pre-procure storage, processing, because we've used the data that we have to add greater value. We know how many tractions. So instead of buying the maximum, which Mark spoke about, we can buy the mean. We know what we're running at, and then we just scale up and scale down through auto scaling. So you have to have a different mindset. It's a different culture to drive the value. So it's baked in, but it's a culture change. You're not buying it once. It's a bit like being a trader. you need to be a trader on a daily basis with a commodity that you're buying.
I think, Alex, thank you very much. I think you've described and articulated there really clearly the digital value chain and the importance of it and how it's playing out in your organization and your transformation. Thank you. Mark, I'm sure you've got a huge amount to say about this because you are sort of one of the powerhouses at the start of that value chain, and yet you see it zipping back to you as well.
Yeah, it's funny. We're at the end of the day, we're a global plumber, right? We connect eyeballs to applications, right? And we do it obviously safely and securely and all the things that marketing wants me to say. But at the end of the day, what we get to see is the whole end to end, right? So what we're watching is, if you take retailers or even into a lot of manufacturers, they're not talking about their client base anymore. They're talking about their communities. Right, and they're developing applications, which a lot of them call very cool departments called emotional engineering department, as opposed to applications. And what they're saying is they're going to develop an emotional attachment to the good, to the clothing, to the sneaker, to the trainer, to the whatever the language is. Right, they're going to develop this community, and it's not a client base; it's a community, and they want people to blog, and they want people to react, and they want people to get involved in loyalty and whatnot. I mean, there's a great example of a ski manufacturer in France, 100-year-old company. They're using gamification, where they're putting an app out to say, how fast did you go down this run? How quick did you change your bindings? How fast did you go around this corner? And they're doing gamification. What they're actually doing is gathering data about their product. Right? And they're then regurgitating that through applications. We sit right in the middle of all of that because we're the transport layer, right? So we have to worry about how's the apps getting delivered, where's it hosted, what eyeballs need to get to it. Is it an actuator talking to an actuator? Is it an eyeball talking to an application? What's the reporting that comes out of it? Is it RPA based, right? Is it AI based? And for us, is I guess the reason we're in there is we have this zero trust layer. Right, so anyone that enters the platform, the authentication engine has to be absolutely rock solid, right? And then, of course, the edge where people are actually entering is no longer the corporate data center. It's now the hole in the wall, right, in your house or wherever the actuator is plugged into. So that secure edge has to be all the way from there, completely secure and fast and rerouted if there's problems in the internet to wherever it needs to go. So being the plumbers, the global plumbers, we get to see all this. And of course, as a human, it's cool, right? You want to, I want to go buy those skis because I want to get into the app and beat my kid going down the mountain, right? And so that digital supply chain is way wider than I think we're currently thinking about from manufacturer who may be putting RFID on packages to see them go through the manufacturing process. This is going all the way out to the consumer, whether that's an industrial consumer or an individual consumer. People are creating these communities, and this digital supply chain, I think, is the enabler to that in many cases. Yeah, we're in a humble position because we're kind of, transporting that securely, but we get to see, the emotional engineering department come up with the cool stuff.
Mark, that was fascinating insight. I was absolutely captivated by what you're talking about, and I'm thinking about some of the people that I buy online from and communities that I'm in. You're absolutely on the money with that one, absolutely. We have 2 minutes left here. So I think that in the last 2 minutes, I want to ask each of you very succinctly for 1 or 2 or 3 takeaways from the very rich conversation that we've had in this panel today. So Vishal, I'll come to you first. Very quickly, 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, for me, the thing is that operational efficiency and the effectiveness is both equally important. You have to take both of them. Obviously, vision and the project planning is also important. You have to make sure that you have a vision, but you also have a project plan backing up that vision. If those both things are there, there is a high success rate involved to get your digital transformation projects successfully executed. So I think those are the 2 of the key takeaways I like this.
Thank you. Alex.
Back to my service vision, the key thing is get every stakeholder signed up to it and committed to it, because they'll be your allies on your journey.
Fantastic, Alex. Thank you very much. Mark.
I think Vishen and Alex said it very well, but I would add, pay attention to the data, pay attention to the end-to-end journey that data is going to go on. and make sure it's secure, because there's a lot of bad actors out there. And that security, I think, then gives people confidence to potentially want to go on this journey a little bit more, but the data has to be paid attention to.
Well, having had a whole career as a chief data officer, I'd like to finish on that note. Pay attention to the data. Absolutely right, Mark. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Alex, Mark, and Vishal. Thank you for sharing with us and your ideas and your innovation and your insights. Really grateful to you. Audience, thank you for joining us today. This panel session has been recorded and it's available to you for the next 30 days on the event platform. If you wish to connect with any of the speakers or anybody else in the event, there is again the event platform where you can do that. And I'd just like to thank you all very much and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.